If there is a message for us today, I believe it is to learn to live from our heart in love. These short lessons, hopefully, will help to inspire you to live with purpose, love passionately, and inspire others. We are the change agent our world needs. I'm Helen Toews. Step into the river today with me to explore the mysteries of God. They are not hidden from us, but for us to discover. I want to press record because I'm kind of excited about tonight. I'm not as excited about the lesson as I am about listening to Susan Willis's testimony. She and I spoke this week, and I said, "Please, would you mind sharing what you just shared with me?" Because really and truly, I'm these kind of testimonies, you don't even know what it is yet, are the breaking the 4-minute mile. And as they start coming in, I'm just believing that we're going to have these kind of testimonies really, really often. But before that, just a little housekeeping. We're on for Saturday for those of you who are interested in starting I'm calling them hosts or leaders. I don't care what the language is, to doing a God Squad or intention meeting. Gina and I are going to be on with you on Saturday from 11 to 1 Central Standard, and we're going to start unpacking the how-tos, and we're going to share some of our background testimonies, how we've got to where we are, because we can only teach and share out of our own experiences. And so we're hoping that it's going to be a really interactive time, and one that's going to help you realize that all of us are really different experiences. There isn't a right, wrong, good or bad, but there is a wonderful opportunity to grow and to share together, and then help and inspire other people as they join in the group. So that's what's happening on Saturday. But right now I'm going to just be quiet. I'm going to put on speaker view because I'm learning to do this. And Susan, everyone knows Susan, I'm sure. I'm looking for you. Right now I see, I need to pin you. There we go. Okay. Hi, Susan.
I changed my mind.
Okay, well then I'll tell it. I'm pumped. No, actually, I wouldn't tell it. It's your testimony, and I just been buzzing since you shared it, really. So thank you for that.
It's all about my daughter. She and her family went for a holiday right at Christmas time for a week, and it was close to Christmas Day. They were on this island. They were swimming. She had been in a bad car accident and has back issues. Anyway, she was in the ocean, and a large wave came in unexpectedly and really took it with her. The wave took her, threw her kind of on the bottom. So she got pretty beat up. Her kids, who are like in 18 and 20, they helped her to the chair, and she was sitting there just letting the body kind of heal itself from it all. And she looked down and she noticed her ring was gone. It had come off in the water. It wasn't her wedding ring, but it was a ring her grandmother, who has since passed, had given to her. There's 2 diamonds and a ruby. And she was extra close to her grandmother, and she loved that ring, and she wore it all the time. And she did say she felt it was a bit big for her finger, so it was no surprise that it had come off in the water when your finger kind of gets cold, you know. But anyway, she was pretty upset. And actually, it made her sick. And so she just carried that with a heavy heart the rest of the holiday. So they got home the day after, the 26th. And she went up to her bedroom and she was unpacking. And she looked on the dresser and there was the ring. It had manifested. The Lord gave it back to her. And she felt very, very strongly the presence of her grandmother. And Karen, my daughter, I did raise her in the faith, but of course she went her own way. And she has just in this last year reconnected with the Lord as he drew her back, and he drew her back with his love. She had been listening to near-death experiences and the similarities between all the experiences. And she commented to me on his love, that this love was so powerful, this energy. And she never thought of God that way. This was new to her. So she's just waking up and she's just starting her own actual personal relationship with God, where before, you know, it was kind of through me, the parent in the church and all that. So right off the bat, you know, the things that she has shared with me, I see that the Lord is responding. It's two-way immediately, like she's hearing. And she was concerned. She had picked up the habit of smoking in the summertime, you know, cheating, having one with a drink up at the lake type of thing. So come the fall, you know, she wanted to drop it. She noticed, oh, it had become a habit. She wasn't able to drop it that easily. So one of her children was coming back from medical school. She wanted that habit gone because she knew she wouldn't be able to hide it. So she went and got her last pack of cigarettes. And when she went home, she heard an interior voice say to her, "Throw it away." So she listened to that voice and she threw the pack away, and she never smoked after that. And there was no withdrawal symptoms.
Wow.
So that had moved her heart, you know, to this place of this ring being manifested, I feel. But we're all connected, we're all growing. And so I feel all of that energy is for her. And it came through her, even though her mother's been doing a lot of work in that area. So I wanted to share that with you, to encourage you.
Susan, that is so amazingly it's really way past encouraging. It's just so way past encouraging.
Yeah.
I just love the testimony is no story. And when you told me, I realized we have been using the term, we're going to break the 4-minute mile. We're going to see these things that we're believing for. All those things that Yolande was saying. Are you seeing the food, you know, appear? Are you being transported? Are you all of those things that we're excited about knowing? We see it scripturally. And now we're beginning to experience all the things that we've really been putting our hearts towards. And I really, really thank you for sharing that. And I'm excited about it. And I know that I've already shared this, but I'm going to share it again tonight and alongside of Susan's testimony, because I had the same experience. So here we've got two people in the in the group that have had that same thing. I'm going to just I'm just going to pin myself because I want to show you as well. I don't know if you remember me telling you this story, but I have a ring. It's on my finger here. It's a gemstone, and it is and it's the very simple thing is it's from heaven. One night I was in my office. I was having a meeting that evening, so I was cleaning up, and in my office I had this electric fireplace, and I had cleaned off the top of it. Like it's wood, so you do whatever cleaner thing, and so there was nothing on it. I left the room and I came back to finish the cleaning job, and right in the middle of the surface was this gem. And when that happened, I was just over the moon. First of all, my daughter who was in the house, I said, Sue, did you put this there? And of course she's laughing. She says, oh yeah, Mom, I go around and I put gems all over the place. And the next day I took it to jewelers to find out what it was and all that. That's a whole other story that I won't share right now. But I called a friend who has received a number of gems, and I said, is it silly for me just to have this put in a ring? Because it just felt like I'd like to do that. So I did. And so I put it in, had it set in this ring, and I had it set in a high setting because if you look at the ring through it, there's a gem in the gem. It's quite a supernatural look. So last fall, Ed and I had gone to the cottage to open up, do some cleaning, and I had done the same thing. I had worn the ring, and we were working outside and cleaning up the yard and leaves and all that kind of stuff, and I was getting a little cold. And on my way home, I said, Ed, the ring is gone. I'm foolish to wear it. The ring isn't there. And came home, and you know how you feel, just everything sinks. Got home, and Ed went into the bedroom thinking, well, I always do the same thing with my jewelry. I take it off, put it into the same holder, the same everything, so that it's like when you travel, put your passport in the same place all the time, you don't lose it. And so we looked all over. And then our son Bob came over, and I'm despondent. I said, this is what happened. And he went and he looked all over. And I said, and then he just turned to me and he said, Mom, you believe in these things. God gave you this. Don't you think he can get it back to you? And I went into the bathroom and it hit me. Like, just go into that place, Helen. You're teaching it. Go there. And so I did. That night, I went to bed, turned over, looked on the dresser, and the ring was sitting in the place I would have put it if I had put it there, and I hadn't. And do you have any ideas? It's like Susan's daughter. I knew exactly what she felt like when that ring showed up. And the reason I wanted to share both testimonies side by side is I believe that's part of breaking the 4-minute mile, to encourage us. God's no respecter of persons. This is the kind of things that happen. We're believing for these things, and greater shall you do. We are unlimited, and so sharing it is for me the purpose of saying to everyone, that's what he wants to do with all of us. He's not saying, this person is special, that person is special. It's a level playing field, and I'm just excited. I just believe we knew that there's a shift coming, and things are happening. And I'm believing as we go into this year, we're going to start sharing those testimonies, because when we share them, isn't it encouraging? Like, seriously, it's so encouraging for me to hear those things, even when it doesn't happen to me. And we are going to have different intention groups. I just want to hear from everybody and make time so that we can go into these testimonies and just watch things happen. Susan, thank you.
Helen,
Yeah.
can I say one more?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I have a granddaughter who is in university on a hockey scholarship.
Yeah.
And the last year, she has been suffering from panic attacks and had to withdraw from hockey the last 3 months because she's been so unwell with anxiety.
Okay.
She was at the point of vomiting on the bench. She could not do it. It made her physically ill. And she was hiding out in her room. She was not able to even make a meal for herself. Her brother, who's in the same university, was giving her a helping hand.
Wow.
Well, my daughter also has been lifting her up to the Lord. This is the one that the ring manifested.
Right.
And she's been asking the Lord that her daughter would come back even better than she was before, better in every way, with
Nice.
incredible energy and health. And I just want to say that when we crossed over in 2023, she has not been the same. It's like she's completely healed.
Come on.
She went back to hockey. Granted, she's just starting, but there's no anxiety and no vomiting. She's cooking for herself. She has energy. Her voice has changed, and her countenance has changed.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
I mean, we believe she's had a healing.
Absolutely.
Something has happened in crossing over, because I went to a prayer meeting last night, and one of the people there, same thing. They're a different person. Their voice has changed, their countenance, they're lighter. We have to be looking for this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because something has changed this year. We're really walking at a different level altogether.
I think that's the word of the Lord, Susan. That is so true. We are totally walking at a different level. And it's so good to be able to support each other in it. I see in the chat, yeah, Maggie says, expect the unexpected. Amen.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline, you said you have a related story too. Do you want to share that, or where are you?
Hi, I do. Okay. Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm kind of embarrassed to be on video because I'm literally baking brownies for a prison group tomorrow as I'm talking to you, so my hands are dirty.
Oh.
But
Wait a minute.
I had something happen, and shame on me because I didn't think about it as a manifestation. But I realized it was. I was grateful to God. I couldn't understand it, but I had gone on a vacation over the summer and was swimming in a lake. And when I came out, the stone from my wedding ring, the diamond, was gone. We hunted everywhere, same thing. We searched everywhere. I was in North Carolina. I had been there with my ring and my stone. We looked and gave up. There were leaves, etc. It just went on forever, and I finally gave up. Came back to Florida and started thinking about, I had to put a replacement stone, but because I do sometimes go to prison, I thought, well, I'll buy just something very, very, nothing, a meaningless stone, so that I feel more comfortable wearing it anyway. But I was very sad to have lost this. Fast forward, I don't know how many months, but it was maybe 3 or 4 months. And I had been vacuuming the garage. I didn't get to this one corner. My husband comes up and says, you won't believe it. Look at this. And he walks in with the stone and it's in my garage. Why? How? It made no sense because it was in North Carolina. And it just, there's nothing about it that made any sense. We couldn't figure it out. I was so grateful to God, but I didn't really think about it as a manifestation. So forgive me, Lord. I'm going to, as the person speaking before said, we need to be looking for these things.
That's right.
So there's a lesson in it for me. So I just thought I'd share that.
I love that. I love that. But who vacuums their garage?
That's the miracle about that story, I think.
Eddie,
I think that
if you're
someone-
listening,
It was a corner of the garage, but anyway, I called it a mystery. Now I have to call it a manifestation. Thank you to change the terminology.
completely. I mean, from one province, from one state to another, none of it makes natural sense
Yeah.
at all.
And it is the same stone. It's this stone because it always had a little crack in it. So it is the exact same stone. Now a little crack had a line in it. So
That's,
very strange. Amazing. Thank you, Lord.
well, thank you for sharing that. And you know what? There's going to be more. There's going to be more. I'm very grateful that you shared that. Thank you.
I mean, it's all about rings. Anyway, thanks.
I know, but let's expect the unexpected, like Maggie said, really, that is so good. So very good. Well, all right. Does anyone else have anything?
Yeah, yes, I'd like to share something if I may. It's not a ring, but it
Okay.
is a book.
Okay.
And as you were talking earlier, that's what came to me, is that I need to be looking out for this. And it happened to me today, actually. I've got a 5-year-old grandson, and I normally do book reading. I help him read his books, school books. And I got this book from the library, but they look very similar to the books that you have at school. So by accident, I sent it into the school system, because I know that, because I could see that I'd written it into his logbook. So that's why I know where it went. So we've been searching for it for weeks before Christmas, because it belongs to the library. And it's not showing up. The teachers are saying they haven't seen it. So I decided today that I would go to the library and pay for it, because I know how much it costs. It's a small amount of money, So it's £3.99. So I went to the library today, and I'm completely prepared to pay for this lost book. And she says, okay, I can't take any money from you. And I said, well, why not? She said, well, because for the next 2 months, there's an amnesty on fines.
Okay.
And I'm not allowed to accept any money. If you want to pay it, you can, but you don't need to pay it. So I just wanted to say, I didn't find the book, and I don't know if this counts, but I didn't have to pay for it. So I think that was a favor from God. And I was just thanking him. And as you were giving the testimony, I was thinking, yeah, well, that's something similar happened to me today. And it was slightly different. But yeah, God was really good to me. I just thought I'd share that.
You know what? There is no small goodness of God. And I think it all fits into the same thing. He is showing, like pouring out his goodness on us. Thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful story. When the book shows up, let us know too, because that's fun. That's really fun. Wow. Is anyone else that? All right.
I have one.
Okay.
Hello. Okay, I have one. This is from when when I was married. I was probably married about a year or so. And I just lost the diamond out of my ring. I had no idea where it had been. So it had to have been at least a year or more later when I'm cleaning my dresser. And I have a tendency to have a few extra clothes on my dresser than I should, but I know that it was cleaned up before then. Anyways, I was cleaning my dresser this one day and I hear this bing. And I'm like, I had this thought, my diamond. I went beside my dresser and my diamond was right there. So there was no money or insurance at the time. I had never had it replaced. But anyways, I have another ring that I had given to my daughter that was a treasure to me because it was a little ruby. I was telling Helen about this yesterday. It was a little ruby chip that was in a heart with a key. And I had given it to my daughter. It didn't fit quite right. So she lost it when she went to camp. And I'm still believing that that's going to show up because it has sentimental value to me because it was one of the first things I ever received from my parents. So anyways, I've already received the one diamond, so I figure it's still there. It's showing up one day.
Hey, and you know what? You've got a whole room full of people believing with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That,
Love it. Love it. Love these stories. They're awesome.
that ring is found. That's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thought somebody had their hand up, so I'm trying to navigate here. Susan.
Yeah, I have a very interesting story. From about a year ago, I was with a neighbor who was at end-stage cancer, and she was getting ready to pass. She was in hospice. She had no family, so I was walking through that season with her. And the last day that she was in hospice, we were at the nursing home, and the hospice nurses were there, and it was just bedlam. And she asked me for grapefruit juice. So I ran down to the store, and I came back, brought her the grapefruit juice, and there was just bedlam in the room. But she was at great peace, and she enjoyed her grapefruit juice. And when I went to leave to take her brother home, I went to get into my car, and I have one of those keyless fobs for my car. We got down to the parking lot, and my car wouldn't open because the key was missing. We went back upstairs and just went through the room with a fine-tooth comb. And he wound up going home. Someone else gave him a ride, and everyone left, and I was there alone with her. And she passed that evening, and they came and cleaned the room, and not a trace. Every inch of that room was searched, and there was nothing. So my husband came down and picked me up and brought the spare key. And I knew in my heart that I knew that was coming back to me. I didn't know where it was, but I was just beginning to practice intentions. So I watched and I waited, and I kept. The next day I went down and I said, well, when you clean the room before the next person comes in, would you please look for it? And I went back, and the next day I went and checked at the desk, and this went on for maybe a week or 10 days. I went or called every day. There was nothing. But I kept believing, and I knew that it was going to come back. So 4 months later, I was getting ready to go away on vacation, and we wanted to take my car, but only had one key. So my husband said, call the dealer and get another key. And I called, and it was going to be $350. And I said, no, I'm not going to get that key because I know it's coming back to me. But I called the dealership anyway because he insisted. And the salesman wasn't there. He wasn't going to be back for 3 days. The next day, I had my grandkids in the car, and as we were coming home, there was an accident on the highway, so we had to get off the highway and come down past the nursing home. That morning, I had a dream that there was this little lady that looked like Aunt Bee. She had a little bun in her hair, she had a little flower dress on, and I had a picture of her sitting at the nurse's station in the nursing home. But nobody at the nursing home looked like that or had ever been there when I was there. But I went into the nursing home because I felt like I should, and there she was at the desk. And I walked up and I said, I was just wondering if anybody found a key fob. And she said, oh dear, here it is. It was on the desk. It wasn't in a drawer or anywhere. She picked it up off the desk and handed it to me, put it in my hand. I went out and got in the car. Of course, I was rejoicing. I was crying. I got in the car. I showed my grandkids. I said, see, this is how God works. This is it. This is it. This is it. So we drove around the parking lot, and they said, Mimi, that might have been an angel. Maybe you should go back and see if she's still there. So I jumped out. I went in, and she was gone. She wasn't there. There was just, the nurse was there at the desk that usually was there. And I just said, hey, I just want to thank you. I said, that lady was so kind to me. And she looked at me, she's like, what lady? Like, who are you talking, what are you talking about? And I'm like, thank you. And I went out and got in the car. And that was just my total story. And it was such a God thing. And my grandkids, it just built their faith so much to see that.
Sure, sure. Oh, my word. Talk about the favor of God at so many levels, so many generations. Sends angels. He gives his angels charge to keep you. How good. How good. Oh my.
How awesome that your grandkids were,
Yeah.
they knew and sent you back to
Yeah.
check on that lady, knowing that she was an angel.
That
That's
the
incredible.
best.
Love it. Love it.
That is the best. No kidding. No kidding. Wow. I think I saw another. Melanie, you have your hand up. Don't want to miss anything.
Yes. Well, what I want to say, it's not a testimony. It's just I want to clean up my conscience. I have a regret because when we are on a meeting of New Year, I have a little vision and I never say it, time fly, you know what it is. I don't want to be next year, New Year, and just don't say anything. So everybody have vision with fire, right? Well, I see water. Soon I close the eyes, I see a river of water. Where I was standing on the land and was a river pretty large that was brown color. Another side, I say was river because it was some kind of type of mountains or some hills. And on the front between me and this other side of the river, that I see come in a form of rain, a sparkling, gold sparkling, kind of like a gold rain. That was kind of like from 2 o'clock position down, and another side like from 12 position clock, that was sparkling colors. That was interesting. I was just thinking about, and I didn't say anything. I just have to say it.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know either, but let me tell you, we are all part of a much bigger picture than we know about. So everybody's part is important. And I just want to say thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you to give me the chance.
That's
I just think
awesome.
that because I was in this sparkling or gold range, we all expect, right, to see the glory manifested. And
Yes.
you know, I kind of think that way.
Absolutely.
I don't know what you ladies think about.
Well,
I think that's beautiful, and I think that the for you as you go back there and revisit that very sacred thing that he showed you, he'll give you what he wants to give you about that. That's beautiful. Don't let it go.
Okay, now you know.
you do, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
All right. Well, what a great beginning. I almost think, where do we go from here? But I think what we'll do is we'll go into the lesson, because let's see what time. Oh, we're good. We're good. Everybody okay? Exciting, really, really, really exciting times that we're in. Wow. Well, last Wednesday, we did a lesson on Ascension. I called it Ascension 101 because for me, I thought it was just so basic. And I was really delighted. I want to say thank you to those of you who shared your thoughts with me. And I'm glad now that we have this lesson on the website, because I think it might help those who are coming aboard in the new God squads. And do you know, the other thing that has changed, it hasn't changed, but now it's really consistent, is I'm every week people are either calling or writing in and asking to be part of what's going on, or just saying, I'm listening, I'm watching, and thank you. So it's really nice to know, because I'm sitting in a room, we're all sitting in rooms right now, we look around and we think there's no people, but really this Zoom experience is quite something. So I'm really blessed to welcome new folks every week, but I'm grateful for those who are watching, so that when we do lessons in the week, people have an opportunity to get caught up with some of the language. So we experienced an ascension time together, and one of the things that happened toward the end last week was the encouragement to enter into the sound, right? Do you remember that it went, ah, and then and I also got a number of people after that saying, I don't understand it. And the other people wrote in, said, wow, I really loved it. I really entered into that. So I wanted to take a little bit of time saying how significant that was, and my response to it. Last week, some of the Ascension 101, we covered some of the protocols, some of the principles, and we touched on dimensional realities. For instance, right, we live in 3 and 4 dimensions most of the time: height, length, width, and time. And since birth, we've come to grips with this as our reality. When we find out, and then we find out, especially in talking about ascension and actually speaking about the testimonies tonight, we find out there are other dimensions that can be experienced. I don't know what dimension material goods are able to shift, how it works. I know that they are, and I know it's a dimensional thing because it doesn't just fit our normal everyday lives, and it's really kind of cool. And sometimes when you hear that, especially for those with a church background, we become a little bit like deer in headlines. You talk about dimensions and supernatural things, but then we learn and we experience more, and we really actually know that it fits into a biblical framework. And if we don't receive it as such, as the Lord's favor, and discard it, I think we shut down apart what God is actually bringing us to and into. Many people call this dimensional life New Age stuff, but I like what my friend Nancy says to that, and you've all probably heard it. It's not New Age, it's ancient age. So not going to review the last lesson, but I do want to launch from it. What happened to me in that time last week was very interesting, because when the sound was brought in, and I heard it was Kim say, put your hands to your mouth with the sound, like make the sound into that. Do you know that I had a split second, it seemed longer, realizing I didn't know where my hands were. I had entered dimensionally to where we were in that ascension time, and left this 3D world where everything's solid and, where I was familiar with. And I realized that I had engaged in the fact of what we know, and that is everything and anyone and everyone is energy, like everything. Everyone, we are energy. And part of our understanding of entering other dimensions, understanding ascension is a really important thing to realize, is that this isn't a physical happening that we're trying to make happen. It's actually a energetic reality that we are entering. It's a frequency. And we touched on all of that too. We know that everyone created by God has his signature, his essence within us. And I was totally in a place of engaging with my spiritual senses because my consciousness had shifted. When you go into an intention time, you actually go in with a consciousness to what you're doing. It's a purposeful thing we do. It's not something that just you get raptured and there you go. But that sometimes can happen too. We'll probably have testimonies on that. I was occupying a place and space that didn't have relationship to our carbon. That's what science calls it, our flesh and blood, being awareness. I was simply energy form. You can revisit the God code in the lessons if this is confusing to you. But essentially, the understanding from science is that within every human cell, every cell actually in nature has the signature of God, Yod, He, Vav, Gimel in human form. And God, and it means God eternal within our body, and it's encoded. And we know in scripture that Jesus took upon himself flesh, carbon, to live among us. He was all God, all man. So it lines up for me. In the ascension time, my focus to being energy form became my reality. And it's becoming easier and easier to do for me. There are actual times where I will see myself or see through myself. It's very odd. In that energy form, I'm without physical boundaries. I'm unlimited. So when my consciousness came to the present sound, the awe, I landed with a thud. And I looked at my hands as though they were some kind of foreign object for a minute. It was funny, actually. And I'm so glad it happened. And I'm sharing this because some people have asked what the sound was doing. And for those of you that know and had that, oh my goodness, experience, or some just said, entering into the sound, not understanding any of it, was so freeing. So we met that particular little encounter at very different levels, and I just loved it. In the group ascension times, we have different protocols, and when we use this modality individually, ascension meaning ascension, in our private time, it's so great when we're together and being stretched like that. Like we have different experiences alone and in groups. We all know that. And I believe that Jesus showed and illustrated private ascension times. He went into the mountain to see what his father was showing him, and that was his assignment. In Matthew 14:23, it says, having dismissed the multitude, he went into a mountain alone to pray. And when it was evening, he was there alone. There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, there were no mountains where he was walking. And so going into a mountain referenced, I believe, the same as go into your closet and shut your door, going into a dimension, a supernatural engagement that we all have, because that's an ascension experience. And in John 5:19, it says, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself unless it's something he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, these things the Son also does the same way. We can say that when we set ourselves in personal ascension, we set ourselves to see what the Father is doing, hear what he's saying to us, because whatever the Father does, these are the things that we will do in the same way. Jesus was alone. He went up into the mountain. You know, remember last week we said ascension isn't just going up. right? We have that feeling of, I have to get up there and reach something. It's more like occupying a place. Like, and we use the analogy of a sovereign that ascends to the throne. They occupy the throne. They occupy that place of authority. And that's what we do in our individual and collective ascension time. So in Jesus' time alone, he occupied a place from where he could see, learn from Father, and then do the things in the same way. So that's why ascension, or occupying dimensions other than what you're familiar with, is so important, both personally and corporately. When we learn this, we come face to face with God, just like the poem I used last week of High Flight. Remember? At the very end, the poet said, "With silent lifting mind, I have trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space. I put out my hand and touch the face of God." I think only a pilot really has that feeling of understanding the excitement to that. But I believe that is us too, those of us who are enjoying the ascension times. And I encourage you to spend time in personal ascension, because it radically changes your reality. The scriptures will come alive when you do. You'll see yourself seated with Christ, as in Ephesians. You'll see yourself putting on Christ, clothing yourself with the Lord to reveal the glory of God. That's Romans 13:14. Ed and I were talking about the armor of God, and I said, you know what? I studied that a lot. I understand the principles, but I just go right on to putting on Christ, right? Just clothing myself, and to clothe myself with him, to reveal the glory of God. That's my intention and what I see. You'll see yourself transformed and ascended being. That's in Romans 2. And it's the epitome. Ascension time, whether it's corporately or individually, it's the epitome of setting your mind on things above and not on things of this earth. And you actually enter into the mind of Christ and can say, I have the mind of Christ. 1 Corinthians 2:16. You know, our life isn't just about giftings, like what you can do, your rank, your title. We as sons and daughters of the Most High are known by our character. It's what's inside of us. So how do you know if you've changed? How do you know when we're doing these modalities of ascension, intention, like group ascension individually, and tonight we're actually going to go into the awe. How do you know? How do you know that you've changed? Well, to answer this question is really easy. You'll know you've changed when you see what happens when you're under pressure. And whatever that pressure is, it's not the face that you offer to the public. It's the reality of your being, your thoughts, your actions, where no one sees or hears. Everything we do and we say, our actions are subject to us. We know that, right? And no one can make you do or say or feel anything. No one makes you. Kids are really good at this. Well, he made me do it. He made me say it. When you looked at me that way, you made me angry. Well, we know that's childish talk. But we may react, and what we react to is often part of our training, or like our subconscious learning. I'm just going to take a little sidebar here. My father was a commando in World War II. He was a fighter pilot with the RAF, the RCAF, and he had a very rich, intense life fighting in the war. Lots of amazing stories. He was anyway. Well, I'll leave that right now. We immigrated from Norway after the war. And it wasn't until I was older that I was able to have adult conversations with him about the war. We came to Canada, but we may have left a country and a war behind us, but within my father, the war was still in him, because so many years had impacted him with trauma, with death, with dying, with flying, all the things and being a commando was like being like Secret Service. People didn't know really where you were or who you were. And there are a lot of stories out of that. And my mom couldn't waken my dad when he was asleep, because in his subconscious, he was always on high alert. And one time he was woken up when she realized she has to be careful in the early days of coming to Canada. But she woke him, and he was in a dream. And in one moment in movement, he thought there was an enemy intruder, and he bolted upright. Thank God my mother got out of the way, and he put his fist through a bedroom door. Like, that's how embedded and how reactionary we are created to be. We have a subconscious programming to do varying degrees that will act out of our subconscious, that we will act out of our subconscious rather than our consciousness. Now, my dad was the safest man a girl could be with. He was my protector. He fended with me with his life. I never questioned his love or care. So he's not a violent man. It came out of a lot of violence. And it's what's in you that will come out under pressure. So imagine a tube of toothpaste, right? You take the cap off, you press the tube, toothpaste comes out. What if mustard comes out? Is it the fault of the person squeezing, or is it the fault of the company that created the product? We are the person creating our product. And we are not bound by anything. We are wonderfully and perfectly made in the image of our Creator. And if there are things in us, fear, disease, anger, hostility, feel the need to lie, cheat, steal, trauma that haunts us, one of the most powerful things we can do is spend time occupying the place, ascending to our Father, and learn to see what is possible, feeling the feeling, having elevated emotions of being unlimited. Jesus came up to many obstacles, like people hated him, they wanted to kill him. And he had the power to walk through their midst, to reply to religious people with wisdom that most of the rabbis couldn't fathom how he knew. They knew his life. He commanded his world. He was in charge, not the circumstances. He went up to the mountain alone. He spent time, sometimes the Bible says all night, seeing what Father would show him and what Father would say. You know, we're really ready, right, to do what he modeled. We're going to heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the leper. We want to be that person. And we can believe, but I believe we need to also do what we see him doing, because what we see him doing is what the Father does within him, and that's the same power that's within us. If there's any doubt, fear, unbelief, spending time in that place outside of the 3-dimension, 4-dimension world that we understand, being with Father is the antidote. Our subconscious is so powerful. It's the programming of it that allows us to walk without consciously reminding ourselves to balance on one foot and put the next one forward. We just walk. After you learn, you just walk. We learn to ride a bike, drive a vehicle, martial arts, dance moves. All these things are a program that are so embedded in us. They pop up at crazy times. One of my crazy moments when I realized we had done studies on our subconscious and all that, but in our home group we had done starting to learn Ascension, and there's a big group of us, and one of the things I would volunteer to do is to be the scribe, to take notes. And because I can do it on my computer, I can shut my eyes, ascend with the group, and type at the same time. They are totally separate from me. My typing becomes like automatic writing. I can type almost as fast as the person is speaking with my eyes closed. It was shocking, but it's an amazing illustration of how we live often from our programs in our subconscious. Another thing that personal ascension and group ascension does is to reprogram us without external forces. Like, for instance, how many times have we gone to a course, like receive the 6-step procedure for releasing fear, anger management, addictions, pain management, etc. It works in measure, and for some, it works completely and totally. But many, it works for a time, and then we often end up back in the same place because we didn't install a new program that we went for. And this happens because what we think is our reality. What happens is we compartmentalize and put the situation in a box or another room, but we still give it our thoughts and attention, and our thoughts create our reality. They are a creative force. So every time you look at the step model to give your thought your situation, you look at the model, you look at the step. Whereas in Ascension and taking your position in Him, you actually have your focus. You touch the face of God. It's the Proverbs 23, it says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And as wonderful a gift that our intellect is, it's not always our best friend. Our intellect, if there isn't coherence with our heart and the heart of God, it's often connected to our ego. Our ego says, I am what I do. I am what I own. I am my own person. I am what others think about me. That's Wayne Dyer, we were talking about him, says ego is EGO, edging God out. Love that analogy. Ego brings separation from God. And when we identify this way, we become powerless. We are subject to a thinking that cannot be supported by God because God is love. Edging out God fills our soul with the problems, not the godly solution. Our ego, edging out God, because our ego doesn't know how to be still. It's very unfamiliar with peace or silence. And this, in John 6:63, it says, the spirit gives life, the flesh profits nothing. Ascension time gives life. It allows our subconscious program to be upgraded every time. Every time we enter into the dimension where we can touch the face of God. Now, have you ever thought, what is silence? Remember a couple of weeks ago now, Susan Willis taught us how to read Psalm 46:10. And I'm going to read it the way she did, because I know it really impacted a lot of us. So just shut your eyes. I'm going to read it this way. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. You see, be, those two, you can come back now, those two little words have that power of now. And the most difficult to attain, it seems, because we are called human beings. Like, that should have been a clue, right? We have to learn to be human beings, but we act like human doings, and we can't seem to sit still, and we can't seem to shut up. So tonight I'd like to take you into the best teaching that I've learned yet of how to enter into that place of stillness, that place where we can go to be with the Father, the place we can be changed and be the change agent for creation. Joe Dispenza uses the illustration. He says, we must become no thing, no where, no time. If you've done any of Joe's courses or listened to him, that's a common thing. He encourages us to get beyond ourselves into that place where we can sense and be no thing, nowhere, no time, instead of focusing on matter. Because as he says, matter can't change matter. It may seem impossible, but when we achieve this state, we actually come to the place of being unlimited. And it's our thought process of being someone, something, someplace in time that we limit ourselves to 3D. Now, Wayne Dyer, he's becoming our new favorite guy, isn't he? He's, for those of you who don't know, he is our book club author this month, and we are reading his book, Wayne Dyer's book, Wishes Fulfilled, or we're listening online. Anyway, I'm going to use much of his terminology and script, so he gets complete credit for the following, because I want to share this part, and I want to encourage you to go on YouTube to listen to the teaching on this modality that I'm actually going to take us through tonight. I shared it with a number of you, and I was absolutely excited with the response. I sent it out as sort of a test program to see, you know, where are we at, and it had such a good response. I feel like I'd like to have it on this lesson, but get it out to everybody. Anyway, he calls it the japa meditation. And the subtitle is Getting in the Gap Meditation with Wayne Dyer. If you write that into YouTube, or just Getting in the Gap Meditation with Wayne Dyer, this will come up. Now, what is this? Okay, what is this? Number one, we're getting in the gap, and how do you do it? So essentially, what Dr. Dyer says, it's been said that the space between the bars holds the tiger. It's the silence between the notes that makes the music, or the space between our thoughts that everything is created. That space is the gap. Okay, so this is the gap meditation. And the reason for wanting to get into the gap is not so much to give you a sense of peace, but he says, of course you will. It's not so much to make you feel rested, but it will. He said, you can get the equivalent of a night's sleep by spending a few moments in the gap. It's not even to make you feel younger, but of course it will. And the purpose of entering the gap is the space between your thoughts, going into that place on a regular basis. It gets helps you to achieve, and so that you are able to make the conscious contact with God. By making conscious contact with God, it's said that you will know the power of that source and use that power to attract other things in your life. God is that one force in the universe that is indivisible. There's only one force, one power, and you can't divide it. And the only experience that you can have in your physical world is that which is indivisible, is that of silence, and that is the gap. Everything else can be divided. Everything else, up and down, can be divided, good and bad, wrong, right, male, female, life, death. But silence, no matter how many times you cut it in half, you still have the same. You have silence. In the gap, you'll be making conscious contact with the divisible force that is the source of all your power, all your joy, and all of your fulfillment in your life. The gap is the space between your thoughts. The reason that it's so difficult for many people to enter into this gap is because we have so many thoughts going on all day long. Dr. Dyer, I've heard different people talk about this, but he says average person has about 60,000 thoughts every day. And the problem is we have the same 60,000 thoughts as the day before. Each day our mind is noisy. I don't know about you, but there are oftentimes my mind really sounds like a train station. If you could reduce the number of thoughts from 60,000 to 20, there'd be more gaps, right? There'd be more places of silence. If you reduce it down to 6,000, even more, a few hundred, there would be more places in that silence. And it's in that place of peace, in that place of silence, that we touch the face of God. What we're looking for here is a time each day that you can reduce the amount of thoughts that you're having so that the gaps will expand and you can enter them. Have you ever done an exercise or an activation where you just enter into a space? Well, that's what we're doing tonight, into a gap. It is said that it's very difficult to enter this gap, to make conscious contact with God, because we're so busy in our minds, being concerned with our own ego and what separates us from the source, who is God. So what this activation does, it helps you get back to a place, go into the gap on a regular basis. And it's an ancient teaching. It's called japa. The sound, japa, is the ancient sound of the name of God. And that sound is what we heard last week, which is simply ah, ah. It's the sound that is in the name of God in virtually all cultures. Allah, Krishna, God, Adonai, Yahweh, all have the sound ah, and it's the sound that is made without effort. It's made without thought, that allows you to enter into the space between this, between where we center ourselves completely in and on God, is the ah. We're going to unpack that. When you're having trouble focusing on God, actually awe helps us get into that place. That's why last week when we had that experience with bringing a sound into the ascension, for some it actually helped bring them, because they have a sense of knowing, or it was supernatural, but it just brought them into that new place. You know what? It didn't do it for me, because I had so many questions, and I had this experience of having to sort it out, figure out where are my hands? Never mind the sound, where are my hands? And perhaps it's probably the most elusive space for human beings to enter, is the gap between our thoughts. When you attempt to clear your mind, for instance, usually the act of clearing your mind only leads to more thoughts. Think about it. There you go. You just got out of the gap. After all, thinking about what it would be like to be in the gap between our thoughts is just another thought. Have you observed the following at times? Usually we stay on one thought until another one takes over, right? Leaving very little unused space. Spaces between our thoughts are brief, and seldom does anyone wonder what it would be like to have fewer thoughts, or we'd be in that void between them. But the paradox is obvious. Rather than expanding the space between, we move on to more thoughts. We're the creator of our own noise. And what I want to know is how to get out of that, so the focus can be really easy. So why should we concern ourselves with entering into the elusive gap? Because everything emerges from that place, from the gap, from where God is. We get an inkling of why the gap between our thoughts is such a vital concept to grasp when we consider the following. The place that we go into is no thing. We need the void of nothing to create something. Does that make sense? But there's actually a scripture for that. We need the void of nothing to create something. You know, example from the silence, the seed of something becomes a tree, becomes a person, becomes a creation. Nothing happens without the seed of something being introduced. Even our thoughts are seeds of creation, because creation, our thoughts become our reality. So where did they come from? It comes from that place in the void, the silence, the emptiness. But we know that it is not emptiness, we not a void, but it is actually divine intelligence. It is the heart of God. It is the very place where everything happens. Hebrews 11:3. I think this is really interesting. What we see did not come from anything that can be seen. I really spent time going, well, it just exploded in me. What we see, when you see the tree, it didn't come from anything that can be seen. It came from that place, that creative place of the divine. It comes from the emptiness, the void, in the space between. It comes from what Wayne Dyer calls the gap. I call it the heart of God. In the silence between our thoughts, we find the possibilities of creative genius and spiritual awareness that elude us when we remain attentive only to our run-on thoughts. Think of thoughts as things, right? Our thoughts as something, which need silence in between them to attract and manifest the new things that are being created. It's like, this is Dr. Dyer's analogy. Two bricks can't be fastened together to form a wall without space for mortar. The mortar itself is comprised of particles, which require spaces to allow them to become mortar. Our thoughts are the same. Our thoughts require a pause between them to give life to whatever they represent separately. And this is the gap. It's the space that allows us to build, create, imagine, and manifest all that we're capable of creating with these thoughts. So here's a challenge. Observe your thoughts, but don't describe them. Why? Because to do that is to leave the gap and revert to whatever is in the back of it or the front of it. Meaning you come out of the gap and you come back into another thought. Dr. Dyer says, I think of the gap as God's house. Since God is omnipresent, an invisible force that is in all of creation, he is in the gap. We go into him. Within us is the most unfathomable power to enter the gap between our thoughts, where we can commune silently with God and bring to life the same creativity that we see in the world of nature, which is of which, of course, we're an integral component. So I am going to, I'm going to explain it first. I'm going to explain before we go into the activation. The is the only sound that requires no effort. In order to make a sound, you generally have to move your lips, your tongue, your jaw, right? And you can experiment with that on your own. Because at first I thought, well, he's saying but what if I say yaw? Well, that puts other muscles into effect. What if I say whatever? Is the only one that supports just releasing the breath. Requires no support. It's effortless perfection, and we can practice it anytime we like. Allows our mind to get off of all the thoughts that we want to penetrate and enter into, and that they want to come into our mind. And our mind allows us to rest just just by the experience of the release. Is that making sense? Awe allows your mind to get off the thoughts that want to penetrate, and just speaking out awe actually brings us into a rest. Be still and know you are making contact with God. You're leaving your own thoughts and entering into that place with him. We are so used to dialogue, conversation, and noise that we're in the silence, and it can sometimes be very, very uncomfortable. I'm encouraging us to go into that place where creation takes place. And I'm hoping that this activation helps you to enter into a time with God, the same that we saw Jesus model. And he said, I can only do what I see. And as we learn to enter into the silence, into the gap, and in this is just one of many, many, many ways. But I found this so impacting. Going into what is called the gap, as we breathe out his sound, it helps us to eliminate the noise of our thoughts that distract us. And in this place, no one, no thing, nowhere, in this place, we become unlimited. Okay, so I hope that challenges you. I'm going to put us onto gallery view. Before we head into the activation, I just want to know if you're here. Are you on the page, on the same page with me? You're okay?
We're with you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. So it is a very simple activation, actually. And I didn't write it down, did I? Okay. Can somebody write into the chat, Wayne Dyer, japa meditation? And because that will take you into the gap, what we're talking about now. And a lot of what I've just said, you will hear, but you'll also hear his I've got to turn off I'm being distracted by
Is Japa with two JAPPA?
I don't think so. A JP. You know what? I'm sorry, I don't know.
It's JAPA.
Okay. Good.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to do that. We're going to do it tonight. I'm going to, oh, good. Japa meditation. Yeah. Getting in the gap. That will get you to it. I find it really easy to find him on Facebook or not Facebook, on YouTube. So I don't think you'll have a problem. If you do, email me and I will send you the link. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is just get comfortable in any way, like sitting, standing. The neat part about this is that you just make it yours. You just make it yours. Is the music in the background distracting here?
I can't hear it.
Okay.
I can't hear it. I still can't hear it.
No, it's not going. No? Maybe I'll.
No.
Wow. Okay. Well, you know what? We'll do it without music. We will be our own music. And I know that Dr. Dyer has music on his. You'll enjoy it. Okay, perfect. So let's just set. This is a great time to get out of 3D. Just shut your eyes and and relax. Just take a deep breath, and I think it'll be very easy to follow. What he suggests as his, I just lost track here. Okay, because I'm using his book. So get comfortable. Just put your hands very, very lightly on your lap and just rest. What he does is he suggests using the first 10 words of the Lord's Prayer, and because it's so familiar with us. So the first thing is put all of your attention on the word "our." See it appearing on the screen of your mind. Now, I'd like you to move your attention off the word "our" and onto the word "Father." So see the word "Father" appearing before you. Now, what I'd like you to do is slip back into the space between those two words in your mind. Go back into that space between "our" and "Father" and just rest there. And now I'd like you to repeat the sound of God, the sound of "ah," which is the japa. While in the gap, say "Om." If any thought enters your mind, return to the sound of "ah." Might feel awkward at first, but you're staying in the gap between the words "our" and "Father." Now move your attention to the word "Father" and see "Father" appearing on the screen of your inner mind. Now move forward in your mind to the word "who." See the word "who" appearing on the screen of your mind. And now instantly slip back into the gap between the words "Father" and "who," and put all of your attention just in this gap, nothing more. And now we do the japa. Om. Om. Now on the inner screen of your mind, see the word "who" flash. Who, W-H-O. Put all of your attention on the word "who." Now shift forward to the word "art." Put all of your attention on the word "art." Now instantly shift backwards into the space between "who" and "art." And stay in that place with no thoughts penetrating. Feel the lightness there. And now, japa. Om. Om. Now shift the inner screen of your mind to the word "art." See all of your attention on that word. Now move forward to the word "in," just I-N. See the word flashing on the inner screen of your mind. And now instantly shift back to the space between art and in. Stay right there in silence. And now the japa in the space between your thoughts. Now shift to the word on the inner screen of your mind, and now move forward and see the word heaven. It's appearing on the inner screen of your mind, heaven. And now, instantly, I read this wrong. Okay, we'll go back. Shift, shift to the word in, as in heaven. On the inner screen of your mind, see the word in flashing. Now move forward and see heaven. Now instantly go backwards to that space between in and heaven in your mind and stay right there, allowing no thoughts to penetrate. And now while in the gap, while in the space between your thoughts, just release Now, move your thoughts, energy to the word heaven and see the word heaven flash. Now move toward the word hallowed and see hallowed appear before your mind. And now even more quickly move back to the space between the two words, heaven and hallowed, in your mind. Put all of your attention on nothing more than the space between those two words or the gap between those two thoughts. Now repeat the sound of the name of God. Now move your thoughts to the word hallowed on the inner screen of your mind and move quickly toward the word be. Hallowed be. Then instantly shift back from be to the space between hallowed and be. And put all of your energy, all of your attention on nothing more than the space between those two thoughts. You are in the gap. And now, while in the space between those two thoughts, speak out the sound. Now quickly put your attention to the word be, and now shift forward quickly to the word thy, and instantly go back into the space between those words. Re-enter the gap between the words or the thoughts be and thy, and stay in this silent space a little bit longer each time. And now we'll do japa while in the gap. We will make conscious contact with God by repeating the sound that is in his name. Now instantly shift out of that gap into the word thy. And almost instantly shift now to the word name. Instantly go backward to the space between thy name and rest in that space that nurtures your soul while you are making conscious contact with God while in the gap. While in that place between thy and name, breathe out his name. Yah. Dr. Dyer writes, now you have completed a voyage through the gap, or the space between your thoughts, by using the first 10 words of the Lord's Prayer and accessing the presence of this divine energy by repeating the sound of awe. The sound of awe is the only sound you can make that requires no effort. And in order to make that sound, you don't have to move your tongue or lips, jaw. We just aspirate. But if you move nothing and just open your mouth and let the sound come out effortlessly, perfection is the sound of awe, sound of God, which you can practice while in the gap anytime you choose. This technique for me allows my mind to get off all of the thoughts that want to penetrate and enter into my mind. It allows me to experience the bliss, joy, fulfillment, and exquisite knowing that I am making conscious contact with God, leaving my thoughts and entering into the space between those thoughts where all creation takes place. All right. Can you see why some people went, oh my gosh, and just entered into that last week when that sound came forth, and others had that question, what on earth are we doing? Did this at all help you? I'll tell you why it's helped me, because I've been doing it for a while now, but and it's fairly new. I like new things. It's kind of good. But I've been using it as he has just very, very simply shared it. The times where I'm in a time of ascension and a time of intention where I'm expressing desires of my heart, and my mind goes a little squirrely, I just go and breathe out. Nobody even has to know that you're doing it. You can do it anywhere, and just go with that consciousness of knowing that breathing out separates. I actually go into a place where he is, and it separates my thought. It's like it gives me I'm landing my plane into a place. So it's become a tool, if you will, or a modality that actually helps me to just keep the contact, so that when I want to let monkey brain come in, I go, no, but I have this ability to just breathe in to the center point again. And doing it this way that he shared about learning how to, to step in between two thoughts that you have using these words gives you a greater and greater ability and greater stability to be able to push out the noise and go into that place. Like even in times where you're learning individual ascension, that noise needs shutting down at times, and just breathing out that sound and recognizing it as part of his name. You know, in the Hebrew Bible, Yah comes is the complete name of God. So knowing that, I go and breathe that out. I'm finding that I can make that instant contact, whereas before the noise would interfere. So just wanted to share. Because I don't know if it comes up in the book we're reading. Does it come up in the book we're reading? It's been a while since I've read it. No?
I haven't seen it. I'm almost halfway through.
Okay. All right. Explains a little bit. Everybody okay?
I found it
There you go.
extremely easy, which I was surprised at, because I can tend to have 5 million thoughts going on in my mind, right? And I found it was just actually natural. All I can explain. And then at the end of it, one part of it, I felt like I was going back, like my head was going back and I was floating almost. And then at the end, I saw, I can't really explain it that well, but I saw like, it was like bursts of, not like fireworks, because they weren't fireworks, but there was like this burst of a huge round thing. I can't really explain it, but it was just so peaceful and so restful. And yeah, it was a very, very wonderful modality, or whatever way you would express it. But
Right.
yeah, yeah.
That's really cool. And really what you've described is making that connection, that stepping into him. I mean, we've got a lot of words around it. We've got the new word japa, we've got the gap, it's almost speaking another language right now. But at one time, ascension was a goofy word for us. So I love that you had that experience. And why wouldn't you, entering into him like that, have that kind of thing happen? That's very cool.
Yeah, the actual description of the space, it somehow, caused this rest.
Right.
That I haven't experienced quite the same in other ways. So that was really a great experience.
Well, that's really cool, because that's where we want to, that's why, so I don't know if you were on when Susan first introduced us to be still and know that I am God, and ended up in be. We haven't learned to be. And so if this helps us to get into that place of just being, I think it's wonderful, as it actually is working for me. So that's why I wanted to share. I'm not an expert, but I love finding things like that actually work.
Brenda wrote down what she wanted to say. I think she wrote, "Loved it so much at the end. I started to laugh uncontrollably." That's beautiful.
That's so good. That's so good.
I wanted to say how I appreciated your sharing tonight, because it brought some context to what we had experienced last week. I think which is what you were trying to help us with. So I appreciate that. And it actually made sense of something I had seen as we entered the Father's heart last week. I saw the one chamber was actually, it was like the opening of a cave, and it was like you couldn't see down, and it was like around the corner, and sort of like an invitation to come in. And that idea of the gap and coming into his heart, it sort of brings some clarity to that, what I had seen.
That's so good. And Kathy, thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate, that's exactly what I wanted to do, was to bring some clarity. When I don't like everything tied up with a bow. there should be some mystery, but when there's the reactions, different reactions on such an important, what I think is a really important subject for us to learn and step into, like Ascension, then I personally do better with the what is it, how does it work, and why am I doing it? So
Yeah, me too. So thank you. Appreciate it.
okay. Awesome. Gina.
I love this. Thank you. I find when I go into the gap, it's like Pat had said, there's a real sense of rest and a real sense of peace. And the only words I'm sort of concentrating on, or thoughts, are the words that we're going from, to our Father, and then in the gap. And then there's almost a physical sensation of letting go.
Yeah.
It's something, it's almost a little tingling, or a little, I can't explain it, but there's a little bit of a physical sensation there. And I think, wow, oh, that's interesting. It's just it's not even a thought of that's interesting. It's just a happening, an event, an experience. Mm-hmm. And this gap is, we enter in and we do the awe. And as that frequency comes out, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And then later, after the fact, I think, well, okay, wait a minute. There was nothing. And I'm, so what, is this right? Like, and I'm not thinking about it at the time. I'm in it. I'm in the being. I'm just being. And it's beautiful. But then later I think, well, okay. Oh, well, then I get back into my thoughts and I think, well, I don't know if I got a thing. I don't know if I did it right. I don't know if I understood something. Should I have got something out of that? Of course, but in my brain, right? So I just wanted to say that just the quiet, peaceful stillness of the bee in the awe.
Yeah.
Is exactly perfect.
I find, I thank you. That's really good. I find having practice, these things take practice, right? A bit, that I can just take two thoughts and go in the awe without all of that, and just stay in longer, right? Like my breath tonight, the awe wasn't that long, but when you're relaxed and you're just on your own, it's like a breath that just goes and goes and goes and goes, and then their whole sense of the silence comes, and the sense of him comes, and the sense it becomes very emotional. So it's very cool. Yeah, thank you. Yolande, and then Susan.
Well, I had been doing the meditation with Wayne for a while. And but not taking what he was saying, but in the meditation, in the Ascensions, actually, I have to credit Susan Willis when she did the, and I started to do it with my group. And we were taken into absolute stillness and silence.
Yeah.
In fact, this morning, before we started, I was looking out, and usually I look out my kitchen window and I say good morning to Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But I look out at the 3 trees outside, and there's absolute quiet, stillness, no wind, no nothing. But when I start to do that, each tree starts to move. Nothing else around moves, just these three, right? And it's like, wow, okay, Lord, you are responding to me. Thank you, right? And this morning, when I looked out of the window where I sit out of my lounge, and it was absolute stillness, no sound, no wind, no nothing. It was stillness. And I was sitting in that stillness when you started.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
And then after that, I went into my Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of creation. And this is what I got. There are the 310 Sephirot of nothingness: the breath of the living God, breath from breath, water from breath, fire from water, up, down, east, west, north, south.
Very cool. Very cool. That is a there's so much in what you in what you just said that we'll just do a sila. And awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Susan, who's changed our life. Susan.
For me, I've done it a few times. And the first few times I did it, like, it really touched me. I mean, the awe was a whole new thing. And like, I cried because I felt I had come home.
Wow.
And when I went into the gap, like, I really did feel I was looking at God or touching him. And so the experiences were really deep. And when I said awe, it was like, it was like he had just created me and he had breathed into me and I had come to life. And the first thing out of my mouth was, ah. Like, I was, I have never experienced or even felt so physically that oneness with him that strong.
Wow.
And the other thing is, I practiced what you said in focusing. And I have to say it was an exercise and a discipline. And I have never been that focused, that sharp, so right on target, zeroed in all of my being, in the presence of that void, that gap. And I noticed my unlimitedness.
Yes.
And I had this depth of listening that I've never experienced before. And my awareness, so alert, ready, listening, waiting for anything in the silence. And then there's other times I do it and it feels like a big fat zero. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Well, that's all of what you've just said is so encouraging, because the journey we're on. I love what you said at the end too. Sometimes it's a big fat zero. But what we're learning and what we are moving towards with purpose is what you're experiencing, right? With that that awesome, it's almost tangible. It's almost.
I did change it up and I used, Psalm 46:2 or whatever, be still and know I am God. I did it with that one.
Good.
Mhm.
Awesome. And lesson to everyone. In all of this, do what works for you. Like, really. Yeah. And in these things that we learn, we're not all used to discipline, like just a self-discipline. And there's discipline without making it a law in your life. Like if I don't get up at certain time in the morning and pray for I mean, we some of us came from self-imposed disciplines like this. I think that this kind of discipline is so freeing because it's something you can set your heart, your mind to anytime, anywhere. And it isn't a have to, it's a get to. And when you get to, you are taken in to a place that you can't make up. Like you really can't make up. That's awesome. Awesome. And thank you. Go ahead.
Melinda wrote, it is the void, that darkness he is calling, wooing, yearning to take us into oneness with him, with all of creation, that the other side of that place is his kingdom, his place of creation, place of nothingness, place of singularity.
Thank you. Lovely. Lovely, lovely. All right. Does anyone have thank you for sharing your testimonies at the beginning. I was just blessed beyond blessed, listening and just seeing. I mean, really and truly, I'm glad they're recorded because they should be ascribed. It's just amazing what the Lord is doing and his favor being poured out in this season. And I think we're just beginning. I think we are just scratching the surface to that amazing. Somehow we'll get caught up with everything that's bubbling up inside of us. So thank you. And if you have any things that you want to share, email me, phone me, whatever. I'm happy to, and we'll make room for your testimonies because they are keys. They are keys. Don't you feel that it unlocks when you're listening to Susan talking about her, what's happening in her family, and then supernatural appearing of the ring. Well, oh my golly, it encourages you. It unlocks something that's on the inside of you. It certainly does in me, and it gives hope. And I don't know. And knowing God is so good, just so good in the middle of it to all of us, whatever it is you're believing for, need, desire, he's here. He's right here. Yeah. Okay. Well,
sorry, Helen, can I make a request?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some time ago, I lost my white gold ring with the star ruby in it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I was on a beach and I lost it. And I've been praying, trying to call it back. It was white gold. I've never been able to. So could we, if anyone is led, to call that back for me, please? It has been a while.
I'm going to get my daughter to pray for that.
There you go.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan.
There you go. Yeah.
She has the faith.
Yeah.
Well, all I know, Yolande, is that we serve amazing God, and nothing is impossible. And what he's done for one, he'll do for another. And if you can just release it and know, right? See it and just know, then he knows how to put all the pieces together. And I don't know how he does it. Sounded to me like when that key fob, an angel was sent, right? And did, oh my gosh. I don't know how he does it, but he'll do it for you too. I just know. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining in. And anyone who feels that they want to host or lead a God Squad and are interested, come on, let me know. It's a small meeting. I think there's about 15 right now of us that are looking forward to mobilizing God Squads. And it's an informal time. It's a testimony time. It's answering questions. It's a little bit of how-tos, what we're going to do to put it together to open this up. So next week we'll be able to say, this is what's available wherever you are in your time zones. We can move forward. If anyone's interested, please let me know. It's fun with small meetings with one focus, because we can go long, go deep in it. And you're all welcome that feel that way. So we're good. Good. All right. Well, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you, be gracious unto you, may lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his shalom. Nothing missing, nothing broken, rings returned.
Thanks, Helen. Right.
Thanks, Helen.
All right.